Good morning. Welcome, everyone, old and new, young and younger. I'm Mary Beth. I'll be your service leader today. My pronouns are she and her. And as you can see, we got a lot going on out in the lobby, and I'm very excited about it. But first, we'll do some announcements. Right off the bat, if you could turn off silence your cell phones and all those things, that would be greatly appreciated.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Paula Montgomery, and my pronouns are she and her. I have the opening words, and while we are listening, then Mary Beth will be lighting the chalice. Just a word. Both our opening and closing words are coming from the most recent UU World. This one is entitled Together, A Better World, and it's by Kendall Gibbons. Out of a community of diverse heritage and belief, we come together to share our hope and to create good in the world. The prophets of all traditions and times have taught that we are called to mercy, generosity, and mutual care. And to be great is to serve. We know that there can be no enduring happiness for humanity as long as suffering and want go unrelieved. Until all may be sheltered, none of us is truly at home. May the power of our various faiths sustain us in this work, that we may be the hands of holy creativity and justice, and together build a better world. And now if you'll stand for our covenant, please.
Love is the spirit of the church, and service is law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. If you'll stay standing, if you're willing and able, and we will sing our first hymn as the choir comes up. It's in the dark hymnal, page 123, Spirit of Life.
Come unto me. may be seated. Thank you. And yeah, we'll sing the children out. Will you all help us? Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Thank you. So if you are new with us, something to know about us is that we are solely member funded. So everything that we do and all the events we have here, like Sunday service and everything else, it's funded by us. So if you have the ability to give a time or a talent or a treasure, we would greatly appreciate it. Now is the time that I'll invite our our ushers up to collect an offertory. So if you do have some treasure that you would like to share, we'd greatly appreciate it. You can also text or send a check. And we have lots of information on giving, directly. So, Mike, Ray, could y'all play some music? Thank you. Okay, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. So after a Methodist childhood, our speaker became a longtime UU member from Atlanta to Jackson, Mississippi, and now to here. She's been a member since 1984. She's a retired family practice and hospice physician. And she is a part of the League of Women Voters community, an activist. So she's the one who always brings things for bills and things for us to sign and support. Thank you for that. And she particularly focuses or tries to put her time and efforts into areas of juvenile and justice and public education. She has 4 children, 9 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and 2 cats. And she has another great-grandchild that's due June 14th. Very exciting. And she loves reading, and obviously she's a huge member of our community. Please help me welcome Paula Montgomery.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I can't tell you what a joy it is for me to be here and see my people, and what an honor it is to be asked to share some of my thoughts with you. A lot of this, as you know, comes from an article that I read in the Atlantic magazine by David Brooks, but I think you'll be able to tell where what comes in is pure Paula and what part of it is David. And if it's a quote, I'll tell you it's a quote. Last Sunday, Tom Botsford talked to us about Paul Tillich, who is an eminent German-American evangelical philosopher. And what he said was that sin is actually separation. It is separation from yourself and separation from each other, and separation from the ground of all being, and that grace is the sudden realization that we actually belong. We're not separate. We are whole. We belong. All parts of ourselves belong. We belong with and to each other, and to the web of existence of which we are a part. And when we realize that we're not separate, it is grace. It is a flash of pure light, pure insight. What a relief. It's grace. Now, changing subjects, I'm going to read you a story which I know you have heard probably many times, but I'm going to read it again. An old Cherokee Indian is teaching his grandson about life, and he says, "A fight is going on inside of me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." And then he continued, "The other wolf is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." That same fight, that very same fight is going on inside of you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about that for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, "Grandfather, which wolf is going to win?" And the grandfather replied, "The one you feed." Two wolves. Notice he didn't say that the wolf that you tie up and put in a cage will lose. What he said was, the one you feed will win. In this Atlantic article from last September, David Brooks asked, "Why has America gotten so mean?" And he makes some very good points about the ways we're not feeding our good wolf. He starts with the loss of civility and moral teaching. He points out that prior to the middle of the last century, prior to the Second World War in 1950 and 60, prior to that time, we actually deliberately taught morality. We taught it in our schools and we taught it in our institutions. We helped people learn to restrain their innate egotism and selfishness. We were taught to share, starting in Sunday school, share. I had to give the bigger cookie to the guest in my house, even if it was just the kid next door. He got the bigger cookie. We were also taught basic social and ethical skills, that it was good to be kind and to acknowledge gratitude. When I left some kid's birthday party, even if I had a miserable time, I had to go find the hostess, the mother of the child, and tell her, "I had a nice time." It was required. You had to do that. So that was a charge by my mother. And thank you notes. I must have written multiple hundreds of thank you notes when I graduated from high school and got gifts, and when I got married and got gifts, and when I had babies and got gifts. Thank you notes were an absolute requirement. You had to express the gratitude you felt for the recognition that someone gave you. And number 3, we also helped people find meaning in their lives. We had morally formative institutions that provided pathways to a meaningful existence. There were churches, of course, but there were also the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and the YMCA, and even in schools. In the early days, all of the reading material had morals to it. If you can find a McGuffey's Eclectic Reader, all of the stories had morals woven in. with what you read. Of course, that was before my time, but I still remember reading stories in which it was the thoughtful, kind child that was the hero. In 1788, Noah Webster said, "The virtues of men are more important to society than their abilities, and for this reason the heart should be cultivated with more assiduity than the head." Think about that. How we treat each other is more important than our ability to do specific tasks. Much more important to ourselves and to society. Another wise man named Hollis Frizzle, who was president of the Hampton Institute, said, "Character is the main object of education." As late as 1951, now this is sort of the break point between the times when we taught morals and the times we didn't, but as late as 1951, there was a commission organized by the National Education Association, which is the union of educators, and that commission stated that unremitting concern for moral and spiritual values continues to be a top priority for education. Really? Is it? Think about it. Is it really? Well, I think not so much today. Maybe in 1951, they were on the tail end of all that. Today, the goal of education for some is just to get a job. For others, the goal of high school education is to get in a top college. You have to score well on tests, so that's the aim. The competition is so fierce that some parents have been involved in cheating and bribery to get their kids into good schools. Nowhere is the goal to graduate a better person with depth of understanding and empathy. And churches? According to David Brooks, mere religious faith does not make people morally good, but living in a community, orienting your heart towards some transcendent love, basing your value system toward concern for the underserved, those things tend to make us morally good. Remember this: living in a community, orienting your heart toward love, and with a value system based on concern for the underserved, gives you an inner morality. Just reading that reminds me of our covenant. Whether or not teaching and learning morality is present in our churches and our schools, most virtues actually are learned through the way we learn other crafts, by daily practice, through the repetition of many small habits and practices, all within the moral culture that we exist in, a community of common values whose members aspire to earn one another's respect and our own. Another guiding premise, in addition to love and compassion, was that concepts like justice and right and wrong are not just a matter of personal taste. There is a moral order, and we human beings are creatures who habitually sin against that order. We separate ourselves from it. Even while obeying the forms of that order, we are in danger of becoming self-righteous because, after all, we're doing it right. And thus we are in danger of harshly judging others who do not. So, as we work to do what is right and just, we need to be careful to do it with humility, acknowledging to ourselves that we often fall short. This work comes down hard on being self-centered and narcissistic. All the moral teachings in our culture and our environment began to come apart, began to fray around 1945-50, along in there. In the 1950s and 60s, the school of thought led by the humanistic psychologist Carl Rogers taught us that the problem was authority. They believed and taught that the existence of rigid hierarchies led to oppression. People just needed to be liberated. People are naturally good and can be trusted to do their own self-actualization. In other words, the school of thought that since people were naturally good, they didn't need to be taught anything like morals. They needed just to be free to communicate with their inner goodness, their inner selves. So by the end of the 1960s, moral education was no longer found anywhere in the public schools, or actually in most other institutions. The K through 12 schools focused on test scores, and at the college level, there was no longer any focus on the humanistic ideal of cultivating the whole person. The big questions of what is the meaning of life and how to lead a good life were not being asked anywhere. Those questions were considered unprofessional. And psychology began to infiltrate everything. Virtually all public discussions of education and child rearing began to be done in the language of psychology. In his article, David Brooks said that psychology is a wonderful profession, but its goal is mental health, not moral growth, unquote. So, over the 20th century, the words relating to morality appeared less and less frequently in our nation's books and magazines. Use of the word bravery dropped by 65%. Gratitude dropped by 58%. Humbleness by 55%. In 1967, still sort of on the cusp of all this transition, 85% of incoming freshmen in college stated that developing a meaningful philosophy of life was their goal. By 2000, half that many, only 42% said that. And by 2015, 82% said that wealth was their primary goal in life. In a culture that's devoid of moral teaching, generations have grown up in a morally inarticulate, self-referential world. Self-referential, it's all about me. What I like and what feels good to me is what I'm after. Inarticulate, we really have no vocabulary for morality. So many people are living in a very morally thin and spotty culture. They have no moral compass, no permanent ideals. They do not have a reason for their lives. There is no why to living for them. Viktor Frankl wrote that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. When he was in prison, Viktor Frankl, when he was in prison for years and years in the German death camp, his why to live, as he states it, was that he was motivated by his love for his wife and his desire to see her again after the war was over. As it turned out, she died. But his why was his love for his wife. Mother Teresa's why might be to save some more children. Mine might be to see my great-grandchildren grow up. Someone else's might be to support a cause they believe in. Think about Susan B. Anthony. On her deathbed, she was still fighting for women's rights to vote. To make some people, they just generally want to make the world a better place. They want to help their community, the community they live in. Your whys for living are guided by your values and your moral compass. In the absence of these values, some people latch on to a political party to at least give them a sense of community, even with a lack of values. And it really doesn't fill the space that needs to be filled. If you have no moral compass, if you have no why for your life, the lack leaves you naked, alone, lonely, and probably fearful. Looking within to find your compass is way too hard to do. It doesn't give you the skill you need to be decent to one another. Social trust falls because people become untrustworthy. This gives us crowds and crowds of people we call vulnerable narcissists. We're aware of the grandiose ones, the ones that we see on the news. The vulnerable narcissists are the ones that you might not detect among you. They think about themselves constantly. They feel anxious. They're insecure. They're intensely sensitive to rejection. They're on the lookout constantly for hints of disrespect. Their self-esteem is in constant flux. There's no community to support them. They've looked within. The breakdown of the moral framework produces disconnection, alienation, estrangement from those around you, and this is Tillich's separation or sin. The result is an all-encompassing sadness and anger. Things aren't right, don't know what to do, I'm mad. We are not feeding the good wolf very well. We see this in increased suicide rates and mass shootings and public anger. We see it in everyday rudeness on airplanes and in other public places. And we saw it on January the 6th, when the attacks on the Capitol in the United States. Estrangement, anger, no respect for anything or anybody. No doubt about it, these are hard times to live. Too many of our children and our friends and our neighbors are sad and angry. And yet there are glimmers of hope. I'm not going to leave y'all down in the dumps here. There are glimmers of hope. How many of you saw the movie called Won't You Be My Neighbor? I did. I loved it. It was a documentary about Mr. Rogers. People loved it. They went back to see it multiple times. They left the theater in tears. The sight of such radical goodness is deeply, deeply touching. We yearn for such goodness. We yearn to feel included, respected, and worthy of respect. Another example of how we yearn is the popularity of the TV series called Ted Lasso. How many are familiar with that one? Good show. It is the story that premiered in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic. It was the story of a soccer coach who describes his goal, his measure of success, and I quote, "For me, success is not about the wins and losses. It's about helping these young fellows to be the best versions of themselves on and off the field." In other words, moral formation. And Ted Lasso is a cheerful, kind man who has troubles of his own, but he helps those around him to grow more gracious and to treat each other more kindly. If you haven't seen it, look it up. I recommend it. It is the most watched Apple TV show during all the pandemic and all the lockdowns and all the political rancor that happened about that time. The most watched Apple TV show. People wanted it. Our politicians would call Ted Lasso a loser, but it was the most popular series. That's not losing. We yearn for goodness and respect, and we receive it when it comes like a breath of fresh air, with gratitude. So, what can we do? How can we feed our own good wolf? David Brooks suggests a number of things. The first one he suggests is practice being curious about other people. Learn who they are. See them with a patient and loving regard. This requires a good heart, but also social skills of listening, disagreeing with respect, and sitting with the grieving or the confused, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you feel. David Brooks also gives you some formative questions to ponder. And I've been trying to ponder these. They're interesting. For example, what is the ruling passion of my soul? Who am I responsible to? What are my moral obligations? What does it take for my life to be meaningful in today's world? What does it mean to be a good human being? And what are the central issues we need to engage concerning new technology and human life? Think about the recent Alabama problems with in vitro fertilization. There's just a lot of complicated things to think about. All these things are personal and designed to help us with our own egotism. But we UUs as people and as a congregation do actions within and beyond our walls. We support public schools. When the schools fall short, we go to school board meetings and let them know that we hold them to a higher standard. We can write letters to the editors. We do show up in support of justice for minority groups, for women, for the LGBTQ+. This work requires persistence. You can't do it once and it's done. When our city needs housing for the people who live and work in it, we join with others, with other congregations in just Pensacola to attack the problems. And we show up here at UUCP to support each other and to support each other in the work that we do here. We pay attention to the community at large. We lend support. We watch for issues that appear on our ballots, and we vote every time we get a chance. We are a congregation centered on love, service, and peaceful, helpful interactions. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant. This is the basis of our moral compass. We as a congregation and as Unitarian Universalists have much to offer and much work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll invite the choir to come up, and if you are willing and able to stand and sing along with us, we're going to sing a song that was written by Mike and Rivka. And the words will be on here, so they'll kind of lead us, and you can repeat or sing with us.
This world
Our closing words are the prayer for the lamp keeper by Joe Cherry. My prayer for you today is that you understand that you cannot be and say everything, that you are a light, a lamp in the night to help people find their way, but you cannot be their way. Remember also that a steady lamp by which others may guide their own journey is a gift from and to the universe. Be steady, but do not deny your own humanity. Do not forget to take breaks. Do not let your desire to be that steward of the lamp keep you too long from your own journey. Share the burden, share the responsibility, share the honor with others, and go in peace. Thank you. That's it.